Christmas, my niece clinked her glass and toasted to being the only grandchild. No one corrected her. My mom smiled and nodded. My dad raised his glass. My 12-year-old daughter stared at her plate, fighting back tears. I didn't shout. I stood up and said this. The whole room went silent. If you've never hosted Christmas dinner, let me paint you a picture. It's like running a restaurant where the customers are your relatives, the chef is you, the health inspector is your mother, and the Yelp reviews are permanent. My husband Matt and I had hosted for the first time the year we adopted Nora. It mattered to me. Not because I love setting my money on fire buying extra chairs, but because Nora deserved a home where holidays didn't feel like a test she could fail. She was 8 when we adopted her. Old enough to read faces, old enough to understand what family meant, and old enough to be terrified that it could be taken back. So I hosted. I made traditions. I bought matching pajamas. I served food that required 3 different timers and a small prayer circle. And this year I told myself, quietly, stupidly, that maybe things would finally feel normal. Mom and Dad arrived first, of course. They always do. My mother believes arriving early is a virtue. My father believes it's evidence that he is being helpful, which is adorable, because he once tried to help by reorganizing my spice rack, and I haven't found the paprika since 2021. Tiffany arrived next, my sister, wearing the kind of sweater that looks cozy but costs more than my first car. Brielle came with her, hair curled, outfit perfect, smile already warmed up like she was about to walk on stage. And then there were the other guests. Matt's aunt, a couple neighbors who didn't have family nearby, and one of Nora's friends' moms who had ended up staying after drop-off because she'd brought a pie and I'd trapped her with small talk. Which matters, because this wasn't just family. There were witnesses. Dinner happened the way it always happens in movies if the writers hate the main character. The food was good. The conversation was fine. The vibe was careful, like everyone was trying to keep their elbows off the table while also quietly sharpening knives under it. Nora was doing that thing she does when she's nervous, being extra polite, extra grateful, extra small. Like if she takes up too much space, someone will decide she doesn't belong. I noticed. I always notice. Because when you adopt an older child, you learn something very quickly. They don't just listen to what you say. They watch what you tolerate. And then we hit that natural pause in dinner when plates are mostly cleared, drinks are poured again, and someone decides the table needs a moment. Someone, my mother, made a comment about family traditions, smiling like she'd invented the concept. Brielle's eyes lit up. She pushed her chair back, stood up, and clinked her glass with a spoon. It was loud enough to make everyone look. People turned toward her, expecting something cute, something safe. Something like, "I'm thankful for my family," so we could all sigh in relief and go back to pie. Brielle smiled, chin lifted, sparkling like she'd been rehearsing this in the mirror. "To me," she said, raising her glass, "being the only grandchild." There was a beat of silence. Not the deep silence yet. The first one. The confused kind. The, "Did she really say that?" kind. A couple people chuckled automatically, then stopped, as if waiting for an adult to correct it. Because that's what a normal adult would do. They'd laugh awkwardly and say, "Oh, honey, you're not the only—" But my mom smiled and nodded like Brielle had just recited the Gettysburg Address. My dad raised his glass without hesitation. Tiffany leaned back in her chair, smiling, saying nothing. And that's when the room shifted. Not because of Brielle. Kids say ridiculous things all the time. They say the quiet part loud. They test boundaries. They poke at power. What makes it lethal is when adults reward it. Nora didn't cry. She didn't gasp. She didn't push her chair back dramatically. She just went still. Her eyes dropped to her plate like it suddenly contained the meaning of life. Her hands tightened around her napkin. Her shoulders locked, like she was trying to hold herself together with muscle alone. And I saw it. I saw the exact moment she decided to swallow her feelings so she wouldn't make anyone uncomfortable. Matt saw it too. His jaw tightened. He looked at me, not asking, just waiting. Because he knows me. He knows the version of me that used to let things slide. He also knows that version of me died somewhere around the time I signed the adoption papers and realized I'd spend the rest of my life choosing Nora out loud on purpose. I stood up. Not fast, not dramatic, just standing. The way you stand when you've made a decision and your body is simply catching up. I picked up my glass, and I waited just long enough that everyone had to look at me. The room stopped moving. Even my mother stopped chewing, an event so rare it should have been documented. I didn't shout. I didn't cry. I didn't make a speech. I said evenly, dry as sand. I'd like to propose a toast too, to clarity. If she's not family, neither are you. Coats are by the door. Anyone who agrees with that can leave. And then I set my glass down. Deliberately. Like punctuation. The whole room went silent. Not awkward silence. Not confused silence. The kind of silence where you can hear someone's thoughts scraping against their skull. My mother's smile wavered first. "Sarah," she said, voice sweet in that fake way. "Oh, for heaven's sake. It was a joke." My dad's face hardened. "You can't throw us out," he said, like I'd tried to ban him from the state. Tiffany's eyes flashed. "Are you serious?" she snapped. "You're ruining Christmas over a toast?" Over a toast. Like my child's dignity was an appetizer. I didn't argue. Arguing is what people do when they think there's something to negotiate. I answered once, flat and short. "Not in my house." Then I turned toward the entryway, gestured to Coates, and opened the front door. Cold air rushed in, the kind that makes you suddenly aware of your own breath. "If you agreed," I said, "you're leaving." Mom's mouth opened, closed, opened again. Dad stood up, chair scraping the floor in a way that made my neighbor flinch. Brielle looked confused, offended even, like she couldn't understand why the world wasn't applauding her. Tiffany shot up, grabbing her purse like it was armor. They started arguing while they moved, complaining, protesting, doing that thing people do when they can't get their way, making noise to punish you for not folding. But they still moved. Because the thing about a power shift is, it doesn't require their agreement. It requires your follow-through. A couple other guests sat frozen. Matt's aunt looked like she wanted to crawl under the table. One neighbor stared down at his lap, ashamed. Nora still didn't look up. And then the split happened. Some people stayed. Quietly. They didn't say a word. They didn't defend Brielle's toast. They didn't defend my parents. They just stayed. Like they'd been reminded that this wasn't a debate club. This was my home. Mom, Dad, Tiffany, and Brielle marched out into the cold. The door shut behind them. The noise was gone. And the quiet that followed wasn't empty. It was controlled. I walked back to Nora immediately. No victory lap, no triumphant speech. Just me returning to the person who mattered. I crouched beside her chair, gently touched her hand. Matt stepped in on the other side, a steady presence. Nora blinked hard. Her eyes were shiny. She still refused to look up, like eye contact might make the tears real. "Hey," I said softly, the tone I reserve for bruises and nightmares. "You don't have to be small." She swallowed. Matt said one quiet line, low enough that only we could hear. "You're ours. Always." Nora's shoulders loosened by a millimeter. It wasn't magic. It wasn't healing. It was just safety, returning in small pieces. I stood up and looked at the table. "Well," I said, forcing my voice back into normal. "Dry humor is a survival tool." Who wants dessert? Because I did not bake 2 pies for character development. A couple people laughed nervously, someone exhaled, someone nodded, and we continued. Not like nothing happened, like something happened, and we chose Nora anyway. Later that night, after the guests who stayed finally left, after the dishes were stacked, after Nora was tucked into bed with her favorite blanket pulled up to her chin, my phone buzzed, then buzzed again, and again. A few days later, the first desperate text came. And then another. And another. This didn't start at my Christmas table. That was just the first time it got said out loud, with a spoon against a glass and adults smiling like they were watching something adorable. If you want to understand why I stood up the way I did, why I didn't negotiate, why I didn't hear them out, you have to rewind to when Nora first became ours. Nora was 8 when we adopted her. 8 is a cruel age to start over, because you're old enough to understand what's happening, but still young enough to believe every bad thing is your fault. She didn't come to us as a blank slate. She came with a quiet, practiced politeness that looked like good manners until you realized it was fear. Fear of taking up space. Fear of needing too much. Fear of being sent back. Matt and I didn't fall into adoption like it was a cute Instagram story. It was paperwork, meetings, court dates, and the kind of waiting that makes you feel like you're asking permission to love a child. I remember the day we finally got the call. We were sitting in the car outside the courthouse, hands locked together so tight it hurt. Nora was in the back seat, wearing a dress she'd picked herself because she said it made her feel official. She kept smoothing the fabric down like she could iron out the anxiety with her palms. I looked at Matt and whispered, "No matter what happens, we don't let her think she's temporary." Matt didn't even hesitate. "She's not temporary." That was the promise. Chosen means permanent. My parents had 4 years to adjust to that promise. 4 years is not a transition period. 4 years is a lifestyle. And yet, they never really adjusted. It wasn't always a big, obvious insult. It was the slow drip, the kind you can ignore if you're tired enough. Like the first time my mom introduced Brielle to one of her friends and said proudly, "This is my granddaughter." Then she turned to Nora and said, "And this is Sarah's kid." Not my other granddaughter. Not even Nora's name. Sarah's kid. Like she was a package I'd brought along by mistake. I corrected it politely because I'm a woman and I've been trained since birth to smooth things over like it's my job. "Mom," I said with a little laugh, "Nora is your granddaughter too." My mom laughed back, and Dad shrugged like this was none of his business, even though it was literally his business to be a grandfather. Tiffany didn't correct anything. She didn't have to. The room had already decided who counted. Another time, at a holiday gathering, Nora sat beside me on the couch while Brielle ran around the living room like she owned it. Someone asked my mom how many grandkids she had, and my mom waved a hand toward Brielle like she was presenting a prize. "1," she said. Nora was 9 back then. It was 5 months after adoption. I thought maybe they just need more time. Nora didn't react, not outwardly. She just went very still. Her eyes dropped to her lap, and later in the car she asked me, quiet as a whisper, "Did I do something wrong?" That's the moment that haunts me. Not my mother's words. My daughter's instinct to blame herself for someone else's cruelty. I kept showing up anyway, because I wanted Nora to have a family. I wanted her to have cousins and holidays and a messy circle of relatives the way other kids did. I thought maybe if we kept giving them chances, they'd get it. And I had another reason too, one I didn't like admitting out loud. My parents had started a small online boutique. Cute photos, pretty clothes, big talk about the brand. My mother loved saying brand, like she'd invented the concept, and not like she was selling blouses through a website that crashed every other Tuesday. They loved the fun parts, picking inventory, posting pictures, talking about drops and collections. The part they didn't love was everything that happened after someone actually clicked buy. That part quietly became mine, keeping the website working, updating listings and sizes, answering customer emails, handling returns and complaints, putting out review fires before they spread. If you've never managed an online shop, let me translate. It's a constant parade of tiny emergencies, and most of them arrive in caps lock. Where is my order? This size runs small. I want a refund now. And every time my mom would laugh and say, "It's just 5 minutes, Sarah." 5 minutes. Yes, 5 minutes. The way raising a child is just 20 years, and the way keeping a house clean is just one afternoon, if you ignore reality. On top of that, Matt and I sent them money every month because the business wasn't stable yet. There was always a reason, always a rough patch, always a one-time thing that somehow happened every month. They were always one bad month away from real trouble, and I kept helping because I told myself the same lie over and over. If I keep being the daughter who fixes things, maybe they'll finally act like the grandparents Nora deserves. It never worked. Then, a couple months before Christmas, something happened that should have been their turning point. A buyer, an actual buyer, not a random lady in a Facebook group, had reached out about placing a bulk order. Not 1 or 2 pieces. A real order. The kind that would take their boutique from scraping and stressing to comfortable. It wasn't guaranteed yet, but it was close. I'd already spoken to the buyer, and the tone had been clear. If I was vouching for them, the buyer was interested. And that's the important part. The trust wasn't in my parents. The trust was in me. My name was the bridge. I mentioned it casually once. Not as a brag. Not as a big announcement. Just in the middle of one of those family conversations where everyone talks over each other. After the holidays, I'd said, I might be able to set up something that really helps the boutique. My mom's eyes lit up. Dad leaned forward. Tiffany smiled like she'd won something. And from that moment on, they started talking like it was already theirs. Not maybe. Not if it works out. Not we're grateful. Just theirs. Which is why, when those texts started stacking after Christmas, I didn't answer. I opened my banking app instead. Because I was finally seeing the pattern in high definition. They never noticed Nora's face first. They noticed my usefulness. And if they could raise a glass to my child not counting, they didn't get my labor, my money, or my name attached to their next big break. Not anymore. By the time I opened my banking app, my phone had buzzed so many times it felt like it was trying to crawl off the counter. Matt was on the couch pretending to watch TV. He wasn't watching anything. He was watching me. Nora was upstairs in bed, her door cracked open the way she always left it when she was uneasy, like she needed proof we were still there. I stared at the monthly transfer, that little line item that had become normal, like it was a bill we owed for existing. I could practically hear my mother's voice. It's not a big deal, Sarah. It's just a little help. It was never a little help. It was their safety net, and they'd been standing on it while telling me it didn't matter. I canceled it. 1 tap. Gone. Then I did the second thing. I opened my notes app, the one with all the boutique passwords, the customer templates, the 5-minute fixes that had eaten years of my evenings, and I didn't send it to them. I didn't write a manual. I didn't volunteer a training session. I just stopped. No more fixing. No more responding. No more cleaning up their mess behind the scenes. And then I did the third thing. The one thing I never thought I'd do, because it wasn't just money. It was my name, my credibility, my reputation. I pulled my name off the buyer. I opened the message thread. The buyer's last note was polite, upbeat, full of future tense. Excited to move forward. Just need to confirm details. I typed calmly. Hi, quick update. I'm stepping away and won't be involved going forward, and I can't vouch or act as point person. If you still want to proceed, please work directly with them. I read it twice. Not because I was unsure, because I wanted to make sure it was clean, not sabotage, not spite, a boundary. Then I hit send. The room didn't change. No thunderclap, no dramatic music. Just me sitting on my couch, heart steady in my chest for the first time in a long time. I sent Mom and Dad one short text right after. Hire someone. Don't ask me again. No paragraphs. No, after what you did. No argument to chew on. Just a locked door. My phone kept buzzing. I set it face down and went upstairs. Nora's light was still on. She was sitting up in bed, rabbit tucked under her arm, eyes too wide for bedtime. She looked up when I knocked. Hey, I said softly. She hesitated, then asked the question like it physically hurt to say it out loud. Did they mean it? The same question she'd asked in different forms since she was 8. Do I count? Am I real? Am I just tolerated? I sat on the edge of the bed. What they did was wrong, I said. And cruel. Nora swallowed. But, Grandma smiled. I saw, I said. I kept my voice even. And I'm not going to pretend that didn't matter. Her fingers tightened around the rabbit's ear. So, I'm not... Stop. I said it gently but firm. You are our daughter. Your family. Full stop. Matt appeared in the doorway like he'd been hovering nearby. He didn't push in. He just leaned against the frame and said, quiet and solid, always. Nora blinked fast. One tear slid down her cheek. She wiped it away immediately, like feelings were something she needed to keep tidy. I hated that. I brushed the tear away with my thumb. You don't have to be small here, I said. You don't have to earn your place. She nodded, but it was a shaky nod, like she was trying to believe it. And I knew what she needed more than another speech. She needed proof. So I stood up and said, try to sleep. Tomorrow is ours. Downstairs, the phone was still buzzing. This time I looked. Dad. Where's the transfer? Mom. Answer your phone. Tiffany. You humiliated us. Mom. We need to talk. Dad. Call me now. I didn't reply. I let it stack. Because here's the thing about pressure. It only works if you let it into your house. The next text came an hour later, and it wasn't about Nora. It was about money again. Dad. We're short this month. Dad. This isn't funny. The buyer email came the next morning. Not to me. To them. I know because Mom forwarded it like it was evidence in a trial. The subject line might as well have been, you did this, buyer. We're only comfortable proceeding with Sarah as point person. Please let us know if she will remain involved. My mother's message underneath was just, what did you do? I stared at it for a long moment. Not because I felt guilty, because it was so perfectly on brand. They didn't ask about Nora. They didn't ask why I drew the line. They didn't say sorry. They asked what I did, because their world had always been built on what I could do for them. Then my phone rang. Finally, I answered. Speakerphone. Because Matt was beside me, and because I wanted everything in the open in my own home. Mom's voice burst out like she'd been holding her breath. Sarah, are you insane? Dad's voice came right after, heavy and furious. You can't do that! I kept my voice calm. Dry humor is easier than tears. Good morning to you too. This is serious, Mom snapped. That buyer, Sarah, that changes everything. That buyer is not more important than my daughter, I said. A beat of silence. Then Mom tried the first angle, the one she always used when she wanted to erase reality. It was a joke, she said quickly. Brielle was being silly. You know we love Nora. Dad grunted. You're overreacting. I stared at the wall while I spoke, because if I pictured their faces, I might lose the calm I'd fought for. You raised your glass, I said. That wasn't a joke to Nora. Mom's voice went sharp. Don't twist it. I'm not twisting anything, I said. I'm repeating what happened. Dad tried the second angle, the one that used to work because I was trained to flinch. We're your parents, he said. We raised you. You owe us. I almost laughed. Not because it was funny, because it was predictable. You're not owed a relationship with my child, I said. Mom inhaled sharply. So you're punishing us? No, I said. I'm protecting her. Then came the third angle. Panic. Dad's voice cracked around the edges of anger. That buyer is a bulk order, Sarah. That's stability. That's money. I finished for him. Mom's voice turned pleading in an instant, like she'd flipped a switch. Just call them back. Tell them you're still involved. Please. Just fix it. We need this. And there it was. Not an apology. A demand wrapped in desperation. They couldn't believe their ears because, in their minds, I was the automatic support system. I wasn't supposed to withdraw. I wasn't supposed to say no. I wasn't supposed to choose my child over their comfort. You really did it, Mom whispered, like she was tasting betrayal. You really canceled it. I stepped away, I corrected. I'm not attached to you anymore. Dad's voice rose. You have no right. I have every right, I said, still calm. Because it was my name on the line. Mom tried again, softer. We love Nora. You love access, I said. You love my help. You love my money. You love what I can do. That's not fair, she hissed. I let my voice go very flat. Nora's dignity isn't a price tag, I said. You don't get to erase her and still cash my checks. Silence. Then Dad said bitterly, You're really going to destroy us. I took a breath. I'm really going to be Nora's mom, I said. That's my job, not saving you. Mom started talking again, fast, frantic, trying to fill the air with words like words could move me. I ended it. I hung up. Not slammed, not dramatic. Hung up. My phone immediately rang again. I muted it. Then I set the phone down and went upstairs to check on Nora, because that was the point, and I wasn't going to let their panic become her new bedtime soundtrack. A week later, relatives started checking in. You know the kind. People who haven't spoken to you in 5 years suddenly become deeply invested in your emotional well-being the moment there's drama to snack on. Aunt Diane called first. Sweetheart, she said, voice syrupy. Your mother is beside herself. I didn't let her warm up. They raised a glass to my child, not counting, I said. Silence. Then, smaller. Oh. That O traveled faster than any family group chat ever could. Of course, Mom and Dad had their own version ready. Tiffany helped. In their story, I was unstable, dramatic, cruel. I had sabotaged the family business. I had destroyed their future. I had pulled the buyer deal out of spite. Funny how their story always made me the villain and never asked why a 12-year-old was staring at her plate trying not to cry. When people asked me what happened, I didn't write essays. I didn't explain for 15 minutes. I used one sentence. They raised a glass to my child, not counting. Some people backed off right there. They didn't like the taste of it. Others tried the classics. But they're your parents. It's family. You can't hold grudges. I didn't argue. I just repeated the same sentence. Because if people want you to be the bigger person, it usually means they want you to be the flatter doormat. Then Mom and Dad showed up at my door. Not frantic this time. Controlled. Rehearsed. Like they'd practiced in the car. Mom held a gift bag. The kind of bag that's supposed to signal love. Her eyes were shiny. Her voice was soft. "Sarah," she said, "we've been thinking. We want to make things right." Matt was behind me in the hallway, not looming, just present. A reminder that I wasn't alone in my own home. Nora was in the house. I didn't have to see her to know she was listening. She always listened when adults came to the door. Old habits die hard. Mom went on. "We love Nora. We do. We never meant to hurt her." Dad nodded like a man agreeing with a statement he'd rather not sign. I didn't step aside. I didn't invite them in. I just waited. Because I knew what was coming. I'd lived this cycle my whole life. And sure enough, within minutes, the slip. Mom's voice shifted, just slightly, like the mask was getting heavy. "And about the buyer," she said carefully. "Sarah, you have to understand what you did." Dad's jaw tightened. "That was everything," he said. There it was. Not, "How is Nora?" Not, "We were wrong." The buyer. Mom rushed on, words spilling now that the real topic was out. "Just call them back. Tell them you're still involved. You can still fix this." I let the silence hang for a beat. Then I said quietly, "So this is why you're here." Mom's eyes flashed. "No." "Yes," I said. "You didn't come to talk about Nora. You came to talk about your money." Dad's voice went hard. "Don't talk to us like that." "You're talking to me like that," I said. "In my doorway." Mom tried to soften again because she could feel it slipping. "Sarah, honey, we're family." "You toasted that Nora wasn't," I said. Mom's mouth tightened. "You know what we meant." There it was, the real belief sliding out like a knife. I kept my voice calm. "I know exactly what you meant," I said. "That's why you're outside." Dad took a step forward like he wanted to bulldoze his way through the boundary. "We need you." I didn't move. I didn't have to. "No," I said. Mom's voice went sharp, the sweetness fully gone. "So you're going to let us lose everything?" I looked straight at her. "I'm going to let Nora keep her peace," I said. Then I did the simplest thing in the world. I closed the door. Not slammed. Closed. Inside, I stood in the entryway for a moment, breathing, letting my heart slow down. From the hallway, Nora's small voice floated out. "Are they gone?" I turned and saw her peeking around the corner, rabbit clutched to her chest like armor. "Yes," I said, and she exhaled. A full-body exhale, like her lungs had been holding tension for years. That's the moment people don't understand when they tell you to be the bigger person. That exhale. That's the price of peace. And I'll pay it every time. Fast forward. My parents' boutique didn't survive. Not because I cast a spell on it. Not because I hacked anything. Not because I sabotaged them. It didn't survive because it had been balanced on my unpaid labor and my monthly money for so long that the second I stepped away, gravity did what gravity always does. They went bankrupt. And then they lost the house. Not immediately. Not in one dramatic movie scene with suitcases on the lawn. It was slower. Notices. Calls. Panic. Silence. Then smaller living arrangements and fewer places for my mother to brag about. Tiffany didn't bounce back the way she thought she would. Turns out, when you benefit from someone else's stability, you don't get to keep the perks when that stability disappears. She ended up stuck in a job she would have mocked before, something with a name tag and a schedule she couldn't control. The kind of job where you can't wear a sweater that costs more than someone's car and pretend you're above it all. I didn't celebrate that. I just noticed it. Because consequences don't need applause. They arrive on their own. Nora, on the other hand, changed in ways that mattered. She stopped watching the door like someone might come in and take her life apart. She stopped shrinking in rooms. She laughed more. Real laughs, not nervous ones. She started taking up space like she was allowed to exist. Our holidays got smaller, better, quieter in the right way. Matt and I started new traditions that didn't involve swallowing insults and calling it family. And every time Nora looked up at me with that softened expression, I knew exactly what I'd chosen. So tell me, did I go too far or not far enough? Let me know in the comments and subscribe for more.